Cricket. This one word is enough to bring out millions of emotions in this country of billion plus cricket fans. Cricket's huge impact on our psyche was also felt last year when the tournaments resumed after the global lockdown. Cricketing seasons had a record viewership both on TV and OTT, and one of the huge movers and shakers in this space is the fantasy gaming category, which quickly captured users' attention. What is the changing landscape of fantasy gaming in India, and what kind of opportunities does it present for user acquisition? In today's podcast, we have with us Siddharth Banerjee, Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer at Games24x7, and Saroj Panigrahi, VP at My 11 Circle, which is the fantasy sports platform of Games24x7. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Diksha.
Thank you, Diksha.
Great to have you. And leading our conversation today is Vipul Kedia, Chief Data and Platforms Officer at Affle. Welcome, Vipul, and over to you.
Thanks, Diksha. Hi, Siddharth. Hi, Saroj. Thank you so much for accepting this request to interview with us. I'm sure we have a pretty exciting time ahead, and our listeners would love to know more about your experiences. I would request you to just start by giving us a quick introduction to yourselves and what you're doing at Games 24/7.
Thanks, Vipul. Thanks for the opportunity for us to speak to you. My name is Siddharth Banerjee. I head up revenue and marketing for Games 24/7. The second year for me in this very exciting space as we build gaming as a category in India. Before Games 24/7, I've spent about 20 years across consumer goods at Unilever, telecom at Vodafone, and then the world of internet and digital at Facebook. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks, Vipul, for having me. I'm a consumer at heart and consumer analyst by profession. I am playing the role of BP at My 11 Circle. My core job is to keep my team motivated, focused, and guided to provide awesome game playing experience to my users. Right? That's what I do. I have my experience in Game 24/7 through various roles of technology, product, and now at business actually.
Thank you, Saroj. So, Siddharth, let me start with you first. So, as we have all experienced, the entire experience of watching live matches changed in 2020 given the pandemic. But one of the other impacts was that it cemented the space for fantasy sports in India. So, from your perspective, what were the challenges and the new opportunities which you came across as a business during the pandemic?
So, Vipul, 2020 was challenging for all of us as humanity and as business people across categories. There were immense amount of challenges, and as we all know, some of those challenges continue into 2021 as well. For fantasy sports in particular, the first challenge was that for the first couple of months of 2020, there was no live cricket or no live sports. And so therefore, for a rather long period of time, consumers did not have any entertainment to watch on their screens, whether on their television screens or on their mobile screens. And so with lockdowns, there was a need for entertainment, yet for the first half of the year, literally, people mostly at home, stuck because of the lockdowns, did not have live action sporting. And that, of course, affected fantasy as well. Then in the second half of the year came the opportunity, which was in the form of the festive season, of Dussehra and Diwali, and also of the IPL. And so therefore, that was a big moment for all fantasy sports brands in India. Watching IPL with friends and family after such a long time was an experience in itself. So that was fantastic. And so therefore, that enabled fantasy brands to fill that need in the lives of consumers. In a way, therefore, fantasy platforms, cricket fantasy platforms became mainstream. So if you look at IPL last year, you'll see a lot of us becoming sponsors, being on IPL in a big way on television, being out there, recognized by consumers. So it was in that sense a big breakout year for the industry overall. The second challenge that I'd like to talk about was keeping our fantasy users engaged when there was either no live sports last year or the lack of live sports in terms of the intensity. And that was an opportunity for us at My 11 Circle to keep innovating, whether it was in terms of newer content like flashback fantasy, which is old matches for pure engagement, quizzes, picture puzzles, etc. So it allowed us to get consumers coming back on our platforms and keep the love for My 11 Circle alive for millions of consumers.
Right. So, just to understand, how do you define an average fantasy sports user for yourselves? And did you see any change in that typical profile of a fantasy sports user or the consumer behavior and app engagements during the pandemic?
So I think that's the interesting bit, Vipul. There is actually, given the popularity of fantasy sports now in India, it's very hard for us to give you an angular answer in terms of saying, this is the exact user profile. Because with 100 million plus people playing fantasy sports, now the fantasy user cuts across all age brackets, income groups, across geographies in India. For example, one of our winners is this young 21-year-old from a remote village in West Bengal. Another winner, same contest, another winner was a civil engineer in his mid-40s from Kolkata. Another winner was someone who was 55 years old from down south, from Tamil Nadu. So it's now mainstream in the sense that different age brackets, income groups, geographies are using our fantasy cricket platforms. So while the core user is still young, 25 plus, the game has gained a massive following during especially the big tournaments like the IPL, the World Cup. So if you were to kind of take the universe of mobile phone users in India with data activated, which is between 550-600 million, 1 in 6, you'll find that there is a good chance that he or she is a fantasy user. Now, India, of course, we know is a cricket-loving nation, and therefore fantasy cricket has also gained popularity. The interesting bit is that the Indian cricket fan also loves to know more about the game, and therefore our proposition of Play with Champions therefore resonates with lots and lots of consumers. So that's the other thing that's happening. The third thing, which is interesting, is that we've seen encouraging growth of female players on our platform as well. So if you were to traditionally think about the digital ecosystem because of mobile phone ownership skewed in favor of male users, what's been very, very interesting to note is that there has been a growth of female players on our platform. And then finally, fantasy has, what we like to kind of put forward, has fostered a love for learning of the game with rising cricket viewership as more users are tracking live matches to kind of perfect their knowledge of the game and to draft winning fantasy teams. This whole integration of live sports with fantasy has overall therefore helped create what we'd like to call a healthy sports ecosystem. So a very interesting road ahead for fantasy platforms in India, Vipul.
That's great. So definitely, looks like it's becoming more and more mainstream. So Saroj, do you think these trends will stick even after the pandemic eases out and life comes back to normal as we knew it before, or do you think that the behavior will again change and go back to where it was before the pandemic?
So any pandemic of such a long duration, right, bound to have some behavioral change in the human race, right? So there is no get away from that, right? So this pandemic certainly has accelerated and put gaming as a new form of entertainment for Indians, right? And that trend is hard to go by, right? We Indian always find time to get entertained. Even with vaccine, people would go back to work, people would go back to their normal life, but I believe basically they would find time from their life basically to engage with this new snackable content which is now gaming, right? So that trend of gaming being the new form of entertainment is here to stay, right? Here to stay in India for a long period of time. We at Games24x7 continue to invest on data science, artificial intelligence to find out user behavior and personalize the experience for the user, right? For our Rummy and fantasy product. At the same point of time, we are also going to invest very, very heavily into creating, right, new content like Carrom, Pool, Ludo, just to cater to the new demand of gaming as the new form of entertainment in India.
Right. So coming to user acquisition, how do you think that the user acquisition approach and the measurement metrics have changed for the fantasy sports category in the last 1 year?
I would answer that at a bigger span than 1 year. People basically traditionally, if you see, there were two kind of basically marketing, right? Performance marketing and brand marketing, basically, right? And brand marketing were more mainly done on mediums like TV, print, radio, hoardings, right? And performance marketing were mainly driven by basically banner ads on Facebook, Google, on other platforms actually. But in the last few years, with cheap internet and cheap mobile phone, the consumption of video, right, on India has gone up massively. So be it OTT platform like Hotstar, who kind of basically have live matches, be it platform like YouTube, where I think everybody basically just switch on YouTube once in a day at least, right? Or be it basically a medium like Facebook, right, which was traditionally known as basically performance marketing medium, but more than 60% of basically consumptions of is happening on the video on Facebook, right? So I think video as a medium, right, has taken up massively in the last few years, right? And if you want to draw a good user acquisition strategy, you can't keep away from basically making a strategy around good video or brand video basically to build your brand value. In terms of measurement, I think with the help of data science, I think that now newer and newer models are getting drawn to measure basically all these platforms very accurately, or effective of all these platforms very accurately. For fantasy platform, depending on basically where they stand at this point of time, the measurement metrics might be very different, right? At my given circle, we kind of look at two measurement metrics. One, our user goal, how quickly we are growing. And second, once we have a user on our platform, how we can keep him engaged for a longer period of time. These are the two central metrics on which basically we drive our marketing.
Right. So you touched upon a very interesting subject, and I have a follow up to that. So you've traditionally been a mobile first brand, and there has also been big brand advertising push during the cricket season with TV commercials, etc., like what Siddharth mentioned. So, from your perspective, are the lines between performance and brand marketing converging for you?
I'd come to basically the conversion bit at the latter part of my answer. I think both the performance marketing and brand marketing have their roles to play in a overall marketing campaign strategy for a long tournament like IPL, right? I'm a strong believer of basically a well-rounded 360-degree campaign strategy. In last IPL, as Siddharth was mentioning, our proposition was basically play with champion, right? Where a user tests their skills against the champions of the game like Rashid Khan, Watson, or Saurav Ganguly actually, right? So our TV commercial helped us to create a brand awareness and recall at a massive scale because the TRPs of basically TV during last IPL was huge, right? While the performance advertisement kind of played the role of basically last mile conversion, right? So we had basically TV which was kind of creating a brand awareness at a huge scale, and that followed by basically performance marketing to create that last funnel conversion actually, right? Having said that, right, traditionally brands were driven by, as I was saying, TV, print, medium, radio, hoarding kind of basically medium, right? But now if you see, right, brands are also driven by people of sites like Crickbuzz, right, who kind of basically have live score, and also basically other cricketers basically expressing their views on the platform, or OTT platform like basically Hotstar or YouTube. So you can say that basically the performance and traditional marketing kind of basically converging in a way that your performance marketing is now becoming more and more capable of also driving your market, your brand values actually, right? Your performance marketing is not now just a banner ad basically. It's much more than that, right? So it's a combined impact of your performance marketing and brand marketing, which kind of basically driving your brand value.
Got it. So, Siddharth, the next one for you. From an overall brand perspective, how do you think that sports marketing changed in the last year or so? And do you think that you have to rethink how you communicated with the existing and potential consumers as a brand? Or was it a fairly gradual evolution?
So I think if you really look at it, the way sports platforms, sponsorship opportunities, etc., have been used, there has been a large mainstreaming of it. I remember from my time at Vodafone how we were one of the early adopters as one of the associate sponsors for the IPL, and yet you didn't have so many brands as you have today vying for a piece of the TRP pie, as Saroj was mentioning. And so therefore I think people have recognized how unifying sports has become for consumers in general. Big part of that, of course, cricket, but also football, but also kabaddi, but also, and I hope the trend continues, hockey and a couple of other sports. And so, therefore, brands have naturally figured out where consumer attention is and have taken the route to associate themselves with properties and sponsorships like these. So for My 11 Circle, our platform, we used these large sporting opportunities also, and I would say very effectively. So with the help of our ambassadors, Saurav Ganguly, Rashid Khan, we were able to talk about fantasy cricket in engaging ways and in innovative ways under the proposition of Play with Champions. And so, therefore, in 2020, when we actually went out in a big way on IPL, we could see that consumers were responding very positively to our marketing and to our campaign efforts for My 11 Circle. So that's been one big validation for us in terms of our IPL campaign strategy for My 11 Circle. The second has been that over the last 2 years, since we've been in existence as My 11 Circle, we've always tried to create an innovative product idea on which we build the campaign for each big tournament that we take forward. And that has enabled My 11 Circle to be among the top 3 fantasy platforms within a few quarters of our launch. And we are very delighted with that kind of consumer love and consumer acceptance. So last year in IPL 2020, we were talking about Play with Champions. Similarly, we are in a constant innovation flow, and you will see some part of that even in IPL 2021, as we seek to engage even more deeply and delight our consumers using sporting platforms like the IPL.
Right. Now, to slightly change gears and come to a different topic, which is often discussed, which is around the regulatory environment. So, how do you see the fantasy sports landscape evolving in India, especially from the perspective of, the cricket-based apps from a regulatory perspective?
So I think we know this, that fantasy sports in India is defined as a game of skill. So in a game of fantasy, players typically use an array of data and information, which includes player statistics, pitch details, etc. And they use this information to draft their own teams based on real life players in live sporting events by exercising skill, caution, and there is a great deal of thought that kind of goes in. When we look at global studies that have been done with institutes like MIT, researchers have analyzed over time wins-loss records of thousands of fantasy players over multiple seasons. In fact, there is a very interesting report in 2018 that they published, which concludes, in a sense, that fantasy is inherently a contest that rewards skill. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is that the popularity, therefore, of fantasy cricket in terms of participation, as awareness has increased, as access has increased, similarly, consumer engagement has also increased globally and in India, enhancing fantasy cricket's popularity among consumers. And we just spoke about, between Saroj and I, that 2020 was when we could see clearly that fantasy cricket was mainstream. So we believe that the rising popularity of skill-based games in India can actually position India as a global gaming hub, and that the next big gaming success story globally could come out of India.
Great to hear that. Now, moving on, just want to make it a little more interesting, and we do it as part of all Mic'd Up With Mass series. We now have what we call the rapid fire round for both of you. And I would ask each of you 5 questions, and I would request you to give me short answers, maybe one sentence or a few words as appropriate. So Siddharth, maybe I'll start with you.
Okay, and ready?
Sure. Great. So the first question is, what makes you remain growth focused?
Growth focused. I would say maybe a mixture of A, B, C, with A is agility, learning agility. B
Mm-hmm.
is business opportunity, and
Mm-hmm.
C is curiosity.
Great. Uh, Give me any one quote that you live by and draw your inspiration from.
Um, well, actually, there are two. One is my all-time favorite, which is Nike, "Just Do It." And
Mm-hmm.
the second quote that I live by with is "Carpe Diem," seize the day.
Nice. So, which is the one daily habit that has been the biggest game changer for you?
Um, Let me talk about a habit that I have achieved and a habit I think which could be a game changer, but which I have not achieved thus far. The one I have achieved is my daily runs, which is like meditation for me, which kind of gives me a clear mind, allows me to think through problems, allows me to come up with innovative solutions. That's the one I have achieved. So I'm happy about that. The one habit that I know could be a game changer, which I struggle to achieve, is waking up early in the morning to kind of create a morning routine for myself.
Okay. I so agree with you. I think it's the same thing for me. Waking up early and taking out some morning exercise time for myself. I think that's the only way I can start a productive day. If I miss it, then I mean the whole day goes for a toss. So
For sure.
yeah. So just to add to the fun quotient, what would your dream cricket team look like?
That's an interesting one. I guess my dream cricket team would be a team assembled across the 20th century. The greats. It'll
Mm-hmm.
have people like Don Bradman, uh, Vivian Richards, Kapil Dev, Sachin Tendulkar, uh, Dennis Lilly. So it'll be the greats across the 20th century.
Oh, I'm sure that would be the dream team of pretty much anybody on the planet. If we could only see all these people play together, that would be a
Yeah,
real treat.
yeah.
And the last one for you, define Siddharth Banerjee in one word.
Okay, that's a little bit of a difficult one, but I would go with the word evolution, or evolving, or kind of learning every day, trying to grow every day. So, evolution.
Saroj, over to you. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Great. So, what's your business mantra?
My business mantra is be a user first yourself, because that is the only way to provide awesome game playing experience to the user.
Okay. Give me one quote that you live by.
I kind of believe on don't complain about what you don't have. Try to maximize the value from what you have. That's a quote which I kind of basically apply on a day to day basis. Actually.
That's great. So, what would you do if you woke up one day as your favorite cricketer? And before that, who is your favorite cricketer?
Yeah, I think you being a kid basically of 90s, you kind of basically like everybody who have done so well in 90s, right? 90s, early 2000 basically. But if I have to pick one, it would be Saurabh Ganguly is going to be my favorite cricketer. Obviously, if I wake up one day as Saurabh Ganguly, I would just write down everything which he apply, right, in people management, because I think he's a very very clever people manager actually, right? So I would write basically a book on that, so that basically next time when I come back to my avatar, right, I can read that and apply them in my day-to-day life.
That's amazing. So, to repeat again, one from what I asked Siddharth, which is the one daily habit that has been a game changer for you?
Yeah, for last few years, I kind of start my not day but start my basically office day, right, with 30 minutes of basically looking at user behavior, user data, business data, right? And I kind of basically every time basically I look at those data, I kind of unearth something new, something interesting, some behavior which kind of basically which I have not seen before, right? And that starts my day. That gives me that pump, right, to go hard on that day basically, right? I think that has helped me immensely in the last few years.
That's really great. I mean, it's no surprise then that your products are as successful as they are, because if you're spending daily time on looking at the user behavior and deriving learnings, I'm sure that's a huge value add for everybody.
Yep.
Um, and last one for you, define Saroj Panigrahi in one word.
Uh, I think genuine is the word which I would like to use to define myself.
Nice. Thank you so much. So before we move on and end this interview, I would request you both to give us some parting thoughts that you have. So maybe Siddharth, first you.
Sure. Watch out for My 11 Circle in the upcoming IPL and have fun playing on our platform.
Spoken like a true marketer. And Saroj, what about you?
Yeah, I think it was a great conversation with you, people. We at My 11 Circle always try, and our endeavor is to basically innovate ourselves, give our fantasy a experience which they have never tested anywhere before, year after year, right? It's a constant endeavor for us, and our promise to our user is to give them unique offering every big tournament, right? So like Siddharth said, this IPL also is going to be a unique proposition for all the fantasy user. So again, as Siddharth said, watch out for us in IPL 2021.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vipul.
Thanks, Vipul.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thanks, Saroj.
Thank you for joining our discussion today. Interesting how fantasy gaming and brand messaging have become central in the last year, even for someone like a non-gamer like me. So there's an interesting cricketing season ahead of us, and it would be really exciting for us to see and come back to you, discuss what is the next big story coming out of fantasy gaming. That's all from today's episode of Mic'd Up with Mas. Stay tuned for the next episode and check out mas.affle.com for more interesting news from us. Signing off.